Welcome back, everybody, to Culz Reviews Deep Dives, a series that started out just as us talking about movies on YouTube and has delved into becoming a podcast where we go more in depth about certain movies. Since we did do the Spider-Man Lotus deep dive, we thought it was only fair that we perhaps cleanse our minds of said movie and journey back through the history of Spider-Man. Now, you guys might say, where's like all the other like 80s kind of rip-off Spider-Mans? We're not starting there. We are starting with the 2002 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. I think everyone knows, if for anything, Nickelback song, which I know is everyone's favorite band of all time. I actually, to be fair, I totally forgot about that song until the movie ended last night. And I was just letting the credits play, and there was like, a hero can save us. But as with last episode, we have two guests, the same two guests. So this makes for good synchronicity since they've also watched that one. We got Grayson and Nick. So, howdy, guys.
How's
Well,
it going?
I feel in a much more positive place today. Maybe a little bit nostalgic, but positive in all the sense. All right, who wants to lead off? Anyone have any opening remarks about this movie, or just like right off the cuff thoughts that they thought about, or your viewpoints before you rewatched the film, perhaps?
Okay. Yeah, no, it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I think the last time I saw it was like probably 10. So it was honestly like watching the movie for the first time again, and I didn't realize like how good the movie actually is as a movie and not just a Spider-Man movie. So it was definitely a both a trip back down memory lane, but it was a visitation to see how an actual really well crafted Spider-Man movie is done.
Yeah, I'd agree with that statement. And it was funny because as I was watching the film, I saw like this thing on Facebook that was talking about how the Spider-Man films, I think it was the second one, Spider-Man
Mhm.
2, which we'll probably talk about next time, is the only like Spider-Man film to ever win an Oscar because these movies were actually cinematic uh, pieces of work. And I was thinking, I was laughing because I'm not too familiar with Sam Raimi's work, but I do know that he started off in like the horror genre. And as I was watching it, I couldn't help but pick up on those like horror-esque type things. Every time it shows the Green Goblin, it has like a scream, like a jump scare kind of thing.
Yeah, the horror aspect is definitely there. It was more comedic too, and not like in a cringy or just not meaning to be comedic way, but there's definitely a few parts last night that I laughed to. I will say, I don't know, maybe it's just the copy I watched it on, but some scenes looked not filmed high quality like we're used to, or like the rest of the movie. Like some looked straight out of perhaps a reshoot, which we'll get to because I know there was some pretty big reshoots, including the finale of the, or at least reworkings of the film because of 9/11. As well as I did want to talk about, I guess when we get to the end, the comparisons to what James Cameron had brought to them, because quite a bit does carry over. At the same time, not a whole ton, but some of the more major aspects I think people know Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man at is from James Cameron. Uh, Grayson, so it's been a while since you've watched this, correct? You said 10.
Yeah, so it's been like 15, almost 20 years since I've seen this movie. But yeah, no, it was definitely it was like it was the fun part of being able to watch the movie for the first time again in a long time. So it definitely took me back to being able to. I didn't have like a whole lot of nostalgia for it because I don't remember that much of the movie. So I was able to come into it with at least a semi fresh pair of eyes on this, except for the fact that that Nickelback song. Even when I heard it as a kid, it was just so good. But yeah, no, it was definitely a fun time. I loved the movie. I think um, seeing Sam Raimi with his ability to craft a story and actually direct and be able to tell a story with filmmaking instead of what a lot of people try to do nowadays with just basically force feeding everything to you and just holding your hand through a plot. It was very refreshing to see that again, and it makes me miss those days because I don't want to get too ahead of myself before we start going through like the beginning and everything, or I'm not sure how we're gonna go through this, but it was just nice to see. I forgot how good the craft of story or of movie making used to be, because it used to just be, you know, they used the entire runtime to tell a story. It wasn't just, you know, content and then go on to next product.
It wasn't half the time doing establishing shots
of the World Trade Center.
I will say it was very concise. It was very tight. It was like, I kind of realized it as I was taking notes about the movie. I was able to differentiate each segment of the movie. It wasn't just like, okay, are we like, you know, now at a different point? It was like, this is what we're doing here, 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 here. Now story's over. And everything was cohesive.
Some of the stuff that I enjoyed about this too was the character work and the character building. Like, you could have pulled some of these characters out of like outside of a Spider-Man movie, and it would still have made a good movie, you know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my nostalgia was looking back and remembering superhero films from the 90s, because there was definitely a lot that had carried over that you might see in the Batman, like the Tim Burton Batmans, or like the early X-Men's, or The Crow. So that was a lot of my nostalgia, was just seeing tropes, I suppose, that we don't really see anymore. Or just like set pieces too. Like, even though it was a set, like, it was really, really nice. Nick, anything to add to that before we hop on in?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It was done kind of masterfully, where the characters were established, and not a whole lot else I can say other than what you just said. There's a whole, you did pretty well in phrasing that.
Well, let's get into the film. It does open up with at least with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, him chasing a bus, and just like nobody likes him on this bus. And I know a lot of people give him like heck for looking old. I didn't really I mean, I guess we're accustomed to like teenagers back in the day looking older because they were always played by older people and not teenagers, but he was younger than Andrew Garfield when they filmed this one. So I think he was the second youngest outside of obviously Tom Holland. Why does nobody like him? Because in the comics, some people like him, but nobody on that bus likes him.
I think they're just pulling from the source material of like the Amazing Spider-Man and all that stuff. He's a science nerd, and back in the day that wasn't cool.
Hey, I'm somewhat of a scientist myself.
Nice.
Oh,
I didn't realize we were gonna just intermingle all the memes and stuff.
I honestly think it was also definitely being a nerd that grew up in the early 2000s. It was definitely a trademark of the time period, with just every movie decided to make it where, like, you know, everybody critically ridiculed the nerd for no reason, or just hated them because they were, you know, nerdy. But honestly, the way that Tobey Maguire kind of plays Spider-Man kind of gives him like that deeply autistic nerd vibe, where he's just like nonverbal at some points, just staring off into space. So I don't want to say that invites bullying, but it was definitely like, you kind of get it, because it was definitely how the early 2000s treated people like that. So it kind of made sense.
I will say some of the dialogue in this movie is not good.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think it's just the. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
I was just to say, I was thinking about that too when I was watching. There's that scene where, like, shortly after he gets his powers, and Aunt May is like, "You're acting so strangely, Peter," and he just goes, "Okay, thanks." It's like, that's not how you would respond in that scenario. That's not the actual way a human person would respond.
I thought that too, but I also kind of thought it was. You could kind of tell that everybody was a little uncomfortable in acting in this, because they kind of knew it was going to be either a huge hit, or is just going to be one of those movies that ruined their career. So they weren't like giving it their all, except for maybe say Willem Dafoe, because he was going all in on this role. But it definitely felt like, you know, Tobey Maguire was kind of like reserved. Kirsten Dunst kind of was. So was James Franco. Plus, a lot of these people were just starting out in Hollywood at the time too. So they were definitely not what they are today. But I do feel, I agree, the dialogue was definitely like at least in the first half was not as well executed as it could have been. Because as you said, that whole scene with Aunt May was definitely it was definitely off.
Or there's the this scene where Mary Jane's arguing with her dad, right? And Peter's walking out the trash, and she comes out. Did you hear that? I was like, what?
Yeah, he's right outside.
Oh no, it's talking about the garbage.
What about Deathstroke? He did pretty well in this movie.
Yeah, for the 2 minutes he has a screen time in this movie. No, it was before we get too far ahead too, I do want to mention like the opening score and the actual opening credits were really good. Like watching him kind of like suit up with the webs and stuff, I thought was pretty sick. And Danny Elfman's score, it was also like for some reason really intense and kind of gave off horror vibes, but it was like it just went a little too hard for what Spider-Man deserved in the early 2000s.
Yeah. So hey, I like the score as well. Danny Elfman's pretty iconic as far as scoring different films, and I know him and Rami had worked together on multiple projects, so they knew each other well, and I think that's what helps the flow. Because I know as far as like crafting the score, most of the time it's not done till after the film's actually made, and there's just kind of like not fake sound, but just like soundtracks they'll throw in to kind of stand in. So while they're watching the film, they can kind of get the character beats and stuff to work out right. But yeah, no, it worked well. Definitely the long opening. I think it works better in the next film just because there is the like artistry and recapping of the other movie when they're doing the credits, which I think did X-Men do these opening credits all the way through 3?
That's a good question. I actually don't remember the X-Men films not that much anymore.
Hot take. I'm not a huge fan of the first X-Men. I know everyone loves it, but hey, you know what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning? Same thing as everything else. It's an actual dialogue.
No, we all know.
We're trying to forget, Keegan.
After the bus scene, we're introduced to Harry, played by James Franco, who, I don't know. I guess we haven't gotten Harry outside of Dane DeHaan live action yet. But
No.
I think, I don't know, what can you expect? Oh, well, if we don't count Lotus, we did get him there. So now that I remember that in my brain.
I was just gonna say, I don't know about you guys, but as I was watching that film, I just did not understand. Because I was thinking back to the sequel. I was like, I don't understand how Harry went from being what looked like a stoner in high school to being the head of his father's company, other than inheriting.
All that happened was his dad got stabbed in the abdomen
by Spider-Man.
By Spider. I'll get you. Wait, no, that's Amazing Spider-Man. My bad. I was mixing the Harrys up. His dad though doesn't care for him at all. Like you do kind of feel bad for him, and obviously when he starts going psychotic with the split personality of Goblin uses that to seduce Spider-Man into meeting up because he uses Mary Jane too. But I do like how like throughout the movie he's always just like, yeah, whatever. Peter, you're doing so well, Peter. We have been following you.
Yeah, no, he definitely enjoyed catching up with Peter more than he enjoyed hanging out with Harry.
I'll talk more about it later, but yeah, I think that definitely was a good establishment of how bad Norbert and Harry's relationship is. Yeah, I'll talk more about it when we get deeper into after all the introductions of the characters have been made. But I do think, even though the delivery of the lines was not great, the writing is definitely there, and if you're willing to kind of give it the slack that I don't know if you necessarily it deserves, but it is definitely worth considering. Is that it was definitely a lot of start of a lot of people's careers, and it was a movie that nobody really knew it would actually be as big as it was. So it was nobody really. If you pay attention to the actual dialogue itself, the words are really good. It's just the performances are really, really B movie esque.
We keep saying that it was the start of everyone's career, but I'm pretty sure everybody had a role before this movie. I think earliest performance for anybody was for we just said his name, James Franco. I think this is one of his earliest performances. But like Kirsten Dunst had been in like Jumanji when she was a kid, so she had acting experience a little bit beforehand. And Tobey Maguire, I think, was also a childhood actor. So they both
he
had a little bit
was.
of experience.
Probably just more of a catalyst to get them more into the mainstream.
It was probably their first big role.
Yeah, most of them were no names, is what I'm essentially referring to. But
Right.
I forget who plays Uncle Ben and Aunt May, but they do really good. Like honestly, fantastic. There are some of the characters I'm like, you can probably pick them out and just put them in a '90s movie or a 2000s like coming of age movie, and they'd be perfect. You know, a lot of the time too, you kind of get the kind of like a Breakfast Club vibe, like you know those '80s like high school movies, which is I know when they made Amazing Spider-Man 2, they wanted more high school, and then they immediately graduated him. But I thought this one did pretty well. Granted, all the actors too old, but I think you really only notice that when the teacher on their field trip is probably the same age, if not maybe younger than the rest of the kids.
Oh yeah, no, I was thinking about that when I saw him interacting with Flash Thompson. I was like, they're like the same age.
Yeah, he's just like, "Hey guys," and you're just like, "Is that the teacher?"
Yeah, it could easily have been either the teacher or that kid that helped line the students up for school with the teacher, hoping to get extra credit.
No, hey, at least in this movie, Flash looked like he could have beat Peter Parker up.
Very true.
I thought he did good. You know, he's kind of a stereotypical high school bully in this one, but I think he played the role good.
I mean,
was
he
just
was
the
a
right
small
amount.
role, so yeah. Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead, Grayson.
Pretty much what you just said. It was just the right amount for the amount of time he was on screen for.
I will say
Kind of-
real quick before we go on after I think this movie did a really good job of pulling from like the source material of the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. It captured the dynamics there between Peter, Harry, and MJ more than like any of the other films have, but no other film has actually gotten the actual origin story for the Ultimate Spider-Man comics.
Yeah, and when we get to what the origin was going to be, it's definitely different. Raimi took it back to kind of going back to where we were at the field trip. They go on a field trip. Peter's taking pictures of Mary Jane, what she's known to do, kind of stalking her throughout the entire film. This time it's all consensual, right? She's like, yeah, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then the spider, which, talking about writing, they're like, is there supposed to be another spider? Oh, they're probably just working on it. You're not going to check. Just like go make sure. Like you're working on these experimental spiders, and you're like, it's fine, it's good. But yeah, then he gets bit by the Black Widow-esque spider, and our adventure begins.
Adventure begins. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this.
Look, all I got to say about that photography scene is, ladies and gentlemen, you got a rhythm with a tism. That's all I got to say. But yeah, no, that was 2000s, or that was definitely a hard throwback to the original comic of Spider-Man.
I was making the comment because I was watching it and then while my parents were doing stuff for a good chunk of the time, and I was talking with my dad about how Kirsten Dunst's performance as MJ has definitely not aged well, like throughout the entire 3 films.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Well, going off of this film alone, she's dating Harry. She kisses Spider-Man, which, you know, whatever. And then she starts flirting with like Peter, and while she's with Flash, and while she's with Harry, and it's just
And then she
not
gets dumped
actually.
by all of them.
Wait until
Yeah,
we get to Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was Spider-Man 2 when she walks out of her fiance's out of her wedding to go be with Peter. Yeah, not a good MJ as far as how poorly it's aged.
Yeah, I will say MJ and Peter's relationship throughout the trilogy, like this one, I guess he learns something. But then it's like the second one's kind of the same thing. They kind of just retread it, right? Then the third one, MJ, it's not even supposed to be in the final battle, and they took out Gwen Stacy and re-put her in there, and then it's just like a retread again. And then the fourth one was going to be they just go their separate ways. So I don't think they really knew what they wanted to do with the whole Peter Parker MJ relationship.
I think Sam Raimi actually did have most, or at least according to whatever the rumors were before, what's his name got involved, the producer that started Spider-Man, and he started making a whole bunch of reasons to try to introduce Venom into Spider-Man 3. He had like most of a like complete story where it was not really going to involve Peter and MJ's relationship, but they kind of wanted to like resell toys and a whole bunch of other stuff and kind of like still keep MJ as a central part of the story. And like what he originally wanted to do was focus on the Vulture, so there was supposed to be not as much of a retread of the same thing in the third movie. It was supposed to be more like stable, but because of everything that happened, they had to do something to kind of keep, you know, things moving, because they had to introduce Gwen Stacy too, and then just a whole bunch of other stuff that was producer involved, not necessarily Raimi induced.
Yeah, because 3 was supposed to be what Vulture and Sandman originally.
Yeah, and I think there was one other villain, but I think it was Vulture and Sandman.
Yeah, and then for after he made it, he was gonna have Vulture and I guess Vultress be the villains, but it was going to have John Malkovich in Spider-Man 4. It was a different, I forget who they wanted for Spider-Man 3 to play Vulture, but they were two different actors.
That I don't know, but
the studio was like, no, we don't want Vulture, we want Lizard, and I guess we know who won out there because we did get Lizard as the next villain.
honestly, if Sam Raimi does like, because I don't know if you guys have heard about it or not, but Sam Raimi is rumored to be in talks with Sony right now to come back to do another Spider-Man 4 in his universe, but whether that actually happens, we'll see. But
Right, yeah, I know. I heard that, and then I heard obviously Amazing Spider-Man 3, and then I heard the next Tom Holland one was gonna be again another multiverse one. Because now they know, they're like, hey, we can make money, just throw them all together.
we don't have to. This is proof you can still make a good Spider-Man story and not have it be a multiverse.
Well,
But
especially because you already got Across the Spider-Verse and beyond. Like, just let one multiverse movie at a time. I think that would help. You know.
absolutely. Well, it was like I was going to bring this up like in ending comments, but since we're talking about all the Spider-Man here, this movie was definitely better than the Amazing Spider-Man or duo of movies, and then it was better than anything that Marvel and Sony have put out at all. Like, this was better than any of the Tom Holland movies. It's like, I kind of was okay with Tom Holland going into, you know, that whole Marvel sequence of movies, but seeing now how much he is not like, you know, the comics version of Peter, I kind of get why people are upset with Tom Holland's performance as Spider-Man. So I think what they're doing now with the character is just a little bit too much, trying to keep up with the Marvel formula of just content, and not actually making a movie about Spider-Man, or making a movie that just happens to be about Spider-Man.
So I will respectfully disagree on that one. I do think this is a good Spider-Man movie. Although while I was watching it, I do think they tried to set up way too much there in the movie. Like, they brought the first time they talk about Daily Bugle, they're like, we need a decent picture of Spider-Man, and it's like Eddie's been on it for months, but then we don't actually get an Eddie Brock until 3, and then they talk to Peter about losing his job working for Dr. Connors, but then we know in the second one he's a student of Dr. Connors. That one's a little bit more of a stretch, but I think certain things like that we're just trying to set up a little too much for my taste.
Yeah, I think some of that too can be they didn't know if it was going to succeed. You know, we had just had the Batman flops and Steel and Spawn. Did Blade came out first though. Blade did decent, right? I think it was
so, because
more
Blade spawned 2 sequels.
Yeah, I know it was like more. It was well received by audiences. I don't know if critically it did well. The first one, if I'm 100% honest, it's been a while since I've researched Blade. Um, I know Raimi didn't like Venom. He didn't want to have Venom in his films, and so for the name dropping of obviously Eddie Brock, I think perhaps that's just his way of maybe just letting the fans know he might be there without having to put him in the film.
That was more of a kowtow to Avi Arad or whatever the producer's name is that was pushing for Venom in the movies because he really wanted to have Venom at some point in the movies. And after the series started taking off, Avi Arad started like really pushing for it. So, but yeah, that was definitely him trying to be like, yeah, look, I'll do this to try to kowtow to, the money, the people with the money. But
Well, he's also why we got Gwen Stacy in the third one.
yep.
Oh man, we don't need. Hey, we got J. Jonah Jameson though, and
J.K. Simmons, the
does
best JJ there will ever be.
yeah. That's why he's That's why he's in because he's done what one of the or two of the Holland films. He's in Across or Beyond the Spider Verse, right? He voices it.
Yeah, it's Across the Spider Verse, Spider-Man 2, and Spider-Man 3. The home ones is where he's JJ.
Yeah, and I think he does well. It's funny because no matter which universe you're in, he's the same.
Well, and then with the references themselves, I don't think they were trying to set anything up. I think they were just trying to make it part of the world. So I think if anything, it was world building, like dialogue that was kind of thrown away. And then, as Keegan said, they didn't know if it was actually going to be received well, so they just left it there as kind of plot threads to pull off of. But I don't think it was them planning on setting anything up. I think it was just this is the world, this is what's happening. If you pick up on what we're talking about, great. If not, it's still not going to distract too much from the plot.
Well, I think another thing that kind of points that way is the references to DC characters. Because, I mean, obviously, this isn't owned by Marvel or Disney at the time to name drop like Superman or Shazam.
Well, there is actually a comic series where Spider-Man tries to join the Justice League, but Batman rejects him.
Yeah, the DC Marvel crossover events.
Where we get to see Thanos and Darkseid meet up. Wasn't it in that one the gauntlet didn't work and then Darkseid just killed Thanos?
I think so. Like I think he defeated Thanos for the gauntlet, but the gauntlet didn't work because it was a different universe.
He
So
just threw it away. He's like, this is garbage.
exactly.
I don't want to play you anymore.
I will say the whole scene though when he's trying to figure out how the web works and there's just the scene of the hand and it just goes like that.
Up and
It
away
got
with.
me. Yeah, that got me. I was like, oh, that's perfect. How did you guys feel about the natural webbing? Because obviously that's not how the comics are.
I mean, it makes sense for the Spider-Man that Sam Raimi established. It made sense for him. I
Agreed.
do understand. I do understand that a lot of people were upset because, like, oh, Spider-Man doesn't have natural web, and it's like, but it makes sense. You can see it being part of that character.
Yeah, to Nick's point, it's like we're already in a corny enough, universe as it is. How much of a stretch is it logically that he has now natural webbing? It really isn't. So for the people that were upset about it because it's not exactly like the comics, I thought it was a little dumb. Or I mean, the people that were upset about it is what I mean.
You thought,
Being
yeah,
a-
you thought the people being upset about it was kind of dumb.
Yeah, exactly. Not the actual natural web shooter stuff because that was obvious. I thought that was sick even as a kid. That was awesome. But the people that got butthurt about it not being exactly like the comics is a little too picky. But that's just me.
Well, then it made for that funny moment in No Way Home where he's like, "You guys can't do that."
Yeah, Holland's like, yeah, we can't do that. How do you do that?
He's like, "Does it come out of anywhere else?" It's like, we'd rather not discuss this. It's like, no, we're just curious.
One scene I like is when he's trying to come up with the design of the costume. It's very comic book panel-y. Like it looks like a comic.
Oh yeah, for
And
sure.
that was something I was like, I forgot how this looked in this scene. So that just whole montage and hey, Nick, they didn't put it on a song and just walk around New York this time. So we actually got some point to a montage. So that was good.
Well, did you guys catch the time lapse of him drawing? Because you just see him like randomly speed up, then randomly slow down, then randomly speed up again on sketching symbols and stuff.
The suit looks really good. Is it what a high schooler can make? Probably not.
Oh no, absolutely not. None of the Spider-Man movies are what a high schooler can make, and like that's like Spider-Man Lotus maybe has like the best like high schooler like costume, but that's such a piece of shit movie. It's not. But no, I mean, yeah, it's not a high school what a high schooler would make. It is a good suit. It's an iconic suit. I know that the fans really enjoy playing with that suit in like the Insomniac games since they threw it in there.
Yeah, didn't they petition to get it in there?
I don't think they had a petition to get it in there. I think they were petitioning to get the black webbed suit from the third film, which is my least favorite Venom suit. But I do know that the fans love playing with that original Sam Raimi costume.
Well, and I guess before we get to the costume, we do get kind of a more a high school costume, though it does have the official insignia on it, but it's just like spray painted on a red shirt when he goes to the wrestling match, which is out of the comics, right? And we get the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Did you know that Macho Man Randy Savage prepared for that role by being a wrestler for 30 years?
He is so jacked in that movie.
That is one of my favorite jokes surrounding that film.
Randy Savage is jacked in that movie.
Bonesaw is ready.
Yeah.
I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
Although I do as like this is my nitpick of that scene. I hate the guy who denies Peter the money. I hate his logic there because he's like the ad said 3,000 for 3 minutes. You pinned him in 2. Here's $100. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense mathematically.
Yeah, if you did it that way, at least give him $2,000, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, like I every time I see that film, I was like, that's not how that works. That's not how math works.
Also, gotta say, seeing Octavia Spencer before she blew up with Oscars and everything, and like her early acting career, being the table attendant, I forgot she was even in this movie. And then Bruce Campbell, of course, the quintessential Raimi cameo. Love seeing him as the announcer. It was a good throwback. Took me back to being like 6 years old when I first saw this movie.
I think they confirmed that Bruce Campbell's character in the 3 films is the same guy.
Yeah, because he was going to be Mysterio in the 4th one. There was going to be like a montage of him like capturing all these villains, and one of them was going to be Bruce Campbell as Mysterio. Well, and there's a lot of people who are like, why is it wrestling? Well, because wrestling was big at the time,
Yeah,
and they actually did these.
It's still a very popular sport. You and Alex at work talk about it quite often. It's still a very popular sport, and yeah, if you think about the origins of the character, it makes sense. There's masked wrestlers. He was able to go to do the wrestling thing, and
yeah, and they've I forget. I think it was Kurt Angle, but he had an open challenge when he was in WWE. Granted, they were kind of semi-professional or amateur wrestlers, so it's a little bit different scenario, but it's not totally out of the realm of realism for a comic book movie, I suppose. Sam, how up to this point, what are your thoughts on the film?
I mean, for me, it was just nostalgic, but I don't know. It was a superhero movie.
Yeah, Sam's not a big superhero movie person.
Nope.
Okay, we got through it, Sam.
we got through it. Sam, I know it was torture, but you live to see another day.
Hey, Sam knows it's not the worst thing we've sat down and watched together. Before the wrestling, we get the iconic, with great power comes great responsibility, which apparently was so iconic for the Amazing Spider-Man, they felt they could not do it again. But that scene I thought was good.
I don't think it was that they didn't want to do it again for the Amazing Spider-Man. I think they just were trying to not rehash everything from the first 3 films.
Yeah. Trying to be different.
Here's the thing when you're trying to be different. If it's a classic, you never mess with a classic. But that's just my opinion. But speaking about that scene, I will say when that movie came out, my dad said that a lot to me and my brother, especially growing up, just to try to like help us, as a parent would, to try to help their kids to be, good people. And I never really understood the meaning of that entire scene until I rewatched it as an adult, and I kind of get what Ben is trying to tell Peter in that scene, and that means more to me now, like knowing that's kind of what my dad was trying to communicate to me as a kid. So that has kind of, it was something my dad always said, but now it actually means something. You know what I mean? So that definitely kind of made it more impactful seeing it this time around.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's one thing. It was one thing when I first watched the film, hearing that line. It's another when I'm like an adult thinking about it, because critical thinking skills are much more intuitive and much more intact when you're an adult versus when you're a kid.
Right.
Well, and I think one thing too is you understand Ben's hurt more when he's like, well, then stop trying to be my father or stop pretending to be. I think you understand that more now as an adult versus as a kid. You're like, well, it wasn't nice, but you don't really understand that. But the acting there is good. Of course, after the wrestling match, like Nick says, the promoter, for whatever reason, only wants to give him $100. Even though the crowd went wild, do you think that would help attendance? You know, that leads to Sandman's henchman, which we don't know at this point, but this guy comes in and robs the promoter, and he ends up shooting and killing Uncle Ben. So we get the death, and then Peter, obviously he doesn't know it was the same guy up until they get in the warehouse, and he lifts him up into the light, and he's like, "Oh crap, it's my fault." And then he does the ultimate Batman thing, and he doesn't have to kill him, but he doesn't have to save him. And the guy just falls to his death.
Well, I think to that point too, Keegan, like obviously as the movies go on, you kind of learn more about what happened with Peter and what he told Uncle Ben. Like he was supposed to meet him at the library. He showed up late because he was at the wrestling match, and that dude ended up showing up that way. So when he makes contact with Uncle Ben, and you kind of see like you see Ben happy to see Peter, but then like you kind of hear Ben change his tone like a little bit to like, you know, kind of disappointment because he realized Peter lied to him because he was supposed to be right out in front of the library. You can kind of hear that shift in his voice right before he dies. So I think that's definitely a huge impact on Peter, which we don't really understand the significance of until way later in the series. But I think that is something that is interesting. If you watch the entire way through, you can kind of see how some of the seeds were laid there when it happened.
Yeah, I think kind of going back to filmmaking, I think Raimi at least had an idea of where he wanted to take everything. I know he didn't really get to take it to where he wanted to, but at least for the most part, the major arcs are kind of completed, at least for sure in this movie. And then throughout the trilogy, decently well. Kind of rushed in 3, but yeah, I think Raimi had at
Kind
least
of?
somewhat.
Kind of Russian 3.
It's been a while since I've watched that movie, so I'm going off of pure memory, which is never a good thing to go off. Oh, what happened? Well, we haven't talked about Green Goblin yet, and totally the government's fault for creating Green Goblin in this movie. They kind of force him into just testing on himself, even though it's not ready. If they give him 2 more weeks, probably no get Green Goblin, right? But yeah, William Dafoe just bursts out of that glass and kills his assistant, and then we see him flying around to the other test site, and just great. Like his face.
So I do
Back to formula.
I do love Willem Dafoe's portrayal of the character. However, I didn't understand why nobody knew that he was Green Goblin. Like you would think there would have been security camera footage in the lab. He constantly, when he's killing people, he's like, "Out, am I?" It's like, oh yeah, that's something that Norman Osborn said. Like, how does nobody connect these dots here?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, there's got to be lab check-in logs. There's got to be a whole bunch of different stuff showing he was there. He has to know something.
Right. Well, yeah, because they find him after the lab incident where he becomes Goblin in his house, but they're like, "There's been a terrible accident." So you're just saying that that guy was there by himself?
He's dead, and our glider and suit are gone. We don't know how.
But it's flying around killing. Well, I guess it wasn't yet, but it will be flying around killing people.
Norman's on sabbatical, honey.
What do you guys think of the
Oof.
design? I
I
know
think-
this one's more hot.
When I was a kid, I loved it. But as an adult, like, I definitely think they did a lot better job of his costume in No Way Home.
I still like the costume. I think for the early 2000s, the budget they had and everything else, it is really good. I know they were working on an articulated mask because there's like some behind the scenes footage showing there's like a full facial range, like OG looking goblin mask they were trying to use. But I think for, for the time, for the effort, for the money, I think it's still a timeless look. You'll think of anybody that was raised on those movies, that's what they think the Green Goblin. Every time they hear the name mentioned, for at least for the movies, they'll think of that costume. I think it's not the greatest of all time, but it is definitely, it left an impact, and it's stuff it's the costume a lot of people still think about. It's better than Dane DeHaan's Goblin Disease look.
Grayson, I have to disagree.
Like sarcastically or really?
I don't know. It could be a hot take. We'll find out when. If
Find
you
out.
guys stay tuned for the Amazing Spider-Man 2, you'll find out if I was being serious in this deep dive.
Oh my God, it's gonna take months for us to get to know if you're joking right now. Are you kidding me?
He's laying the seeds for repeat customers. Let's go. So yeah, I won't spoil it, Keegan. So I know the answer.
And it's funny too because going off of Green Goblin, I really, like I said earlier, no one else has really adapted the Ultimate comic books other than the Miles Morales movies. But I would love to see a live action version of that Green Goblin. So if you're not familiar with it, that version of Green Goblin is just like basically like an evil version of Hulk, and I think that'd be fun to see.
The Ultimate Spider-Man version of Green Goblin is a lot like the Goblin Disease, where it's just an injected serum, and then it kind of accentuates the disease, and that ends up being what Norman becomes, and that's definitely a pretty sick Goblin.
And speaking of Hulk, the transformation scene in this one definitely got Hulk vibes. When the green gas is coming in, he's all like spazzing out on the operating, which it just seems like a really weird setup. I don't know. I don't know why that stuck out to me. Don't you think they could have just taken William Dafoe and painted his face green?
Pretty much,
Are you suggesting that Willem Dafoe go green face? I don't think that's gonna offend. I think that's gonna offend some people, dude.
Think of all the Hulks out there.
Yeah, dude.
All the little Hulksters out there.
Just
Hulks,
like Eric
green
Bana
aliens.
shows up at my work and he's like, "You take that back."
I know what you're feeding me. How dare you?
Well, it depends on which Eric Bana you're talking about, because no wait,
Eric
never mind.
Eric Bana the Hulk.
Or I'm
Yeah,
Australian,
Eric
but I'm
Bana,
American.
the actor who played the Hulk in the original. Yeah, the sad one.
I mean, that one has some good comic book. This is not a Hulk discussion. All right, I almost got very, very sidetracked there. I was thinking back to all the comic book transitions that movie had as well.
Well, I thought you were just going to talk about Nick Nolte being Eric Bana's dad, because that's believable. Good God, that movie is so bad.
Anyway, back to Spider-Man.
So now we're back to what's his face, Harry Osborn. He does what he's supposed to do, and again, Green Goblin's just like, "Yep, I've been proven wrong before. Good job on graduating." Peter, we love you. How are you doing, Peter?
Yeah, what an insulting thing to say to your kid. Well, I've been proven wrong before.
He is just not. I mean, I know the only other instance we can base it off of is Amazing Spider-Man 2, which we really don't get anything there either. So I guess, best relationship between the two that we've seen live action so far.
Well, I mean, it's very akin to the comic books. Norman doesn't like Harry. Harry is kind of, the rich Weasley kid that we all kind of have come across in our lives, and their relationship with their parent. It's very like akin to reality and how rich kids have a relationship with their parents.
He saw Mary Jane.
He didn't follow the bro code himself, man.
Right?
Everyone in the films knew that Peter loved MJ, and yet he's like, dude, I'm gonna go get Get it? And it's like your best friend is in love with this girl, and you're gonna just take it if you want.
And he delivers the same trivia that Peter gave to MJ.
Oh yeah.
Nick, to
Yeah.
that point, when Norman Osborn's asking Harry what MJ means to Peter, because I'll save that for when we talk about everything later. But that speech that he gives Norman when he asks Harry about Mary Jane, and he says that he knows Peter loves this girl, and he says that she's the only thing that he cares about more than anything else in the world, and he still goes after her. Absolute violation, not a friend move, douchebag move, 100%.
Agreed.
And kind of going off.
You didn't make a move. Oh, you're right.
Well, kind of going off of the MJ Harry relationship, they have the dinner in the apartment that Harry and Peter are moving into or whatever, and Norman is just like, you think she's just there because your looks, and you're like, do they not look like they could be together? Like, I don't know. I don't think they look.
Well, going off of what we know now, I don't think anyone should be with James Franco. No offense.
Well, no, he says, you think she likes you for your personality. They're all beautiful until they start coming after your trust fund like a pack of ravenous wolves. That entire speech from Norman Osborn is cold as hell. Especially when he wraps it up by saying, get what you need from her and broom her quick. Stone cold. Stone cold response from a douchebag, for sure. But I do want to say before...
hard to believe he's not married in these films.
I don't know if it was like canonically his mom's dead or whatever, but I mean, hey, blame it on the Goblin formula, giving him the Jekyll and Hyde treatment.
That is a good like comparison for sure. I thought about that when I was a kid too. That was a very good like modern day Jekyll and Hyde kind of inspired role.
I mean, I've seen people compare it to what's his face from Lord of the Rings?
Schmeagol.
Yes.
I get that because of the time period, but I don't think it's,
I mean, very clearly it's supposed to be Jekyll and Hyde. That makes a lot more sense.
Because it's science.
It's not
Science.
Middle Earth.
Science.
Science.
But before we get too far into this, I do want to say too, like that post high school, like after they graduate and everything, I feel like the dialogue and the acting kind of picks up a little bit. The performances get a little bit better because it kind of does like start letting them be adults and not pretend to be teenagers at 27 years old. Like when Mary Jane's talking about how, life after high school is not really going the way she thought because she's chasing her dream, but she's working at a diner. Peter's doing the same thing where he's like trying to be Spider-Man and, live his life, but he's not doing a very good job of it. And then I will say too, that montage showing him like kind of coming up the ranks after Uncle Ben gets killed, like the interviews with the like New Yorkers and stuff off the street made it definitely feel more real. And it was like all
he
that
stinks, and I don't like him.
He shoots the ropes out of his hands and climbs up him like a spider. All that stuff, I love that stuff just because it definitely made it feel like Spider-Man is real and it's like something that people actually want to see. So it definitely it made it more grounded, even though it's a comic book movie. It made it feel like it's something that could actually happen and what would actually happen if Spider-Man started making a come up in New York City in post 9/11 New York.
So I would love to see like an R-rated Spider-Man at some point.
This movie
Get
started
fucked
out
the
as an
Aki way.
R-rated Spider-Man.
Hey, Spider-Man, go fuck yourself.
Hey, look at that big old red blue son of a bitch.
And we'll get to it more, but I know the original James Cameron one was rated R, and yeah, there was some cursing. Spider-Man definitely used some profanities. Not that he doesn't in this movie. Maybe not this one, but in the series, I should say.
Fix his damn door.
I had to beat an old lady with a stick just to get these cranberries.
It's a jungle out there.
Well, okay, going back to well, I guess before we get there, I was going to get to his and Norman's conversation because that was kind of weird to me. I enjoyed it. It was very 90s ish. But there's this scene, obviously, at what festival was it? They got Mary J. Who was the singer?
Macy Gray.
It was Macy Gray, and it was the World Music Festival or something like that.
Yeah, the most there was like, yeah, the most 2000s singer I could think of.
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
No, but
Baby, I know we had a bad day.
I will say that scene is just a straight vibe up until Green Goblin shows up.
I love it. I love at the end of that scene when Peter's about to like swing away from MJ, and MJ's like, he's like, you know who I am. She's like, I am. It's like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
She just needs to use the elevator.
And then I also love that at that scene you can clearly see him jump off a trampoline before swinging.
wait, Nick, did you look really hard into the movie?
No, I've watched like behind the scenes stuff of all the stuff today.
I didn't notice that, to be fair. I'm gonna have to rewatch it just for that scene to be like, is he being a Sankara? It's a wrestling
Well,
thing.
then it's funny too because you could see Kirsten Dunst like clearly walk around it, like trying to avoid it.
Oh, we'll see now. Viewers, listeners, go watch that scene and tell us if you saw it. Because I'm gonna go rewatch it now. Because I'm very intrigued. I liked Goblin when he's like, all right, I give up. And then he just like punts the officer like 10 feet.
I didn't understand why that kid didn't want to run away. Like he just stared at this giant balloon coming down upon him.
So, speaking of that scene, when I was growing up with my friends, we would rewind that scene every time because of the mom shouting, "Billy!" We found it hilarious as kids. Don't know why, but as soon as I saw that, it took me right back to being like 6 years old, seeing that thing, just rewinding it over and over again, like, "Somebody please save him!" And as the balloon's coming down, the kid's going,
Billy!
There's a balloon coming at me. Billy!
You know, I feel like next time I'm in Fort Sumner, Sam might play this scene.
Billy!
Sam is saying no, but he's got a smile. He's got a.
Every time I hear
I'm
that
half
sound,
tempted to pull it up
it
right
just
now.
makes me think of Rob Schneider in the Hot Chick, where he's like, "Billy, I'm in here. Billy, I'm in here."
Now, I guess I didn't pay a lot of attention to the balloon. Do you think that balloon would have killed that kid?
If he got crushed by like the steel part of it, probably, but there's no way. I mean, I didn't really look at the trajectory of the steel part of it, but if it was just the balloon, he would have been fine.
I think it would have been hilarious if they're like freaking out and it just like lands on him and he just
You
like
see-
gets out. Yeah. Hey, there CGI for the most part holds up. There's some scenes that don't. One scene I always remember not holding up happens here, and that's when the people on the balcony turn to skeletons.
Yeah, that was very early 2000s, like cheesy CGI.
Yeah.
Let us not forget Spider-Man bouncing on the balloons too.
See, I didn't mind the Spider-Man bouncing on the balloons part, but I did think about like how nobody else got turned into skeletons. Like, if anybody, like everybody should have been turned to skeletons on that, but it only targeted the people that were firing Norman.
Like Harry, who's right
Harry, right there. MJ, right there.
Well, speaking of which, too, that scene where he's talking about like to MJ about wearing a black dress instead of that whatever dress she was wearing was definitely very telling of Harry and Norman's relationship, because he's like, "Why aren't you wearing the black dress?" She's like, "Why?
So I
What's
thought
wrong
that
with this
was-
one? My dad likes black. Well, then he'll like this. Well, I'm just trying to impress my dad. Well, you think I forget what she said. You think I'm pretty, right?
You think
Well,
I'm
hopefully
pretty,
so will
right?
your dad."
I thought that scene was funny too, because Harry is not even wearing black. He's wearing a gray suit, a white shirt, and a blue tie. I was like, dude, lead by example, man.
And no wonder she got mixed signals. What are you wearing?
Look, do what I say. I don't have to do what. Look, I don't. You don't have to do. I don't have to do what I say. You have to do what I say.
Oh man.
All healthy relationships, everybody. All healthy relationships.
Well, and speaking of healthy relationships, this is about the time that Kirsten Dunst starts falling for Spider-Man. Even more so in a more iconic scene, I suppose, coming up here, which definitely gave me Crow vibes. I wouldn't be surprised if they filmed it on the same lot as The Crow, because I think they're both New York. Is The Crow New York too?
I think it's L.A.
It might be LA. It just looked very similar in the design of the alleyway where Spider-Man without his mask is just beating the crap out of some vigilantes that were trying to do some bad things, obviously, to Mary Jane there. And I think this is the whole reason they hired Tobey Maguire, because I think when they were doing the auditioning process, the actor had to be able to do the choreography. And I think it was for this single scene, because this is the only scene, I guess, outside of towards the end fight with Goblin, where you see him without his mask while fighting.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I want to
doesn't
say,
he-
I
I-
want to.
Pretty sure he has
What?
it on the entire time. I don't think he's without his mask.
Oh
No,
no,
he was
in that scene he has no mask on.
until she comes over, and then he goes up into the like dark alleyway and then puts it on, and then zip
And then
lines down.
gives us one of the more iconic kiss scenes we've ever seen. Upside down Spider-Man kiss.
Yeah, where she's just like very excited for it.
Sorry, continue.
That was it. Well, yeah, we get the iconic scene upside down kiss, which I know has been parodied to no end. So even if you haven't seen the movie, you probably know something that's referenced this. I think even Shrek referenced this, or Shrek 2, one of the Shreks.
Yeah, probably.
Grayson's
Yeah, one of
gonna
those
fetch.
DreamWorks movies definitely did.
I'm trying to think what happens after this.
So they make out. What happens is then Spider-Man goes back to his apartment. They're talking, or he talks to Harry for I don't remember what, but like no, that's when he says I was going to tell you about MJ, but you never made a move, man. So sorry. He's like, yeah, you're right. But I think this was also another like really good character building moment for Harry because he's talking to MJ on the phone and she's telling him about Spider-Man and he goes, "Oh, really? What makes him so amazing?" But then he goes into he finishes the conversation by saying, "I'm going to go take you shopping. We're going to buy something."
So that's actually after the World Music Festival. Because he's
That's
in there.
right. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, and
But
he's
I think
like,
who knows?
yeah, he was like, that'll make you feel better. Money
I'm gonna buy
doesn't
you
buy
something.
it. No,
Oh, that's right. Then it goes to the fire in the apartment complex scene after that.
Oh yeah, another shining example of good parenting in this film. The mom who lets her kid almost get crushed by the blimp, and then the mom who leaves her baby in a burning building. I always think of the Dane Cook joke when I see that scene. There's a Dane Cook bit where he's like, "Oh man, I used to want to be a firefighter." And I was like, if I got to a building on fire, I'd be like, F this, I quit. It's like, please, my baby's in there. It's like, what are you doing? What are you doing out here? You think for yourself, or why didn't you grab your baby?
all right. Yeah, and we'll get to the fire scene. Like Nick said, there's a baby. Spider-Man does save said baby after a giant explosion. They're like, my baby. And then I don't think they were going to kill off a small baby in this movie.
A bold move they did.
Very bold move
It'd
had
be
they killed
very
off that
bold.
baby.
It would be a very bold move if they killed off a baby.
That'll be definitely a callback to Sam Raimi's roots. Yeah, I will say the fire scene, I still love it, especially the cop that comes out to arrest Spider-Man after he rescues the baby, just because he is a vigilante. I thought that was a nice touch because it does still, kind of build the world around, even though he's doing good, Spider-Man's still, breaking the law because he's a vigilante, and they can't really stop him because he's got too much power. So they can't really. When he says it's not coming back, Chief, yeah, there's no way they're going to really be able to arrest him. So,
well, yeah, because the film had just announced that the city of New York was calling for Spider-Man's arrest.
Yeah, because that's when isn't that when they have the conversation on the rooftop? That's right, they have the conversation on the rooftop before the fire starts.
Yep.
That's when he goes to the Bugle to ask Jonah who does the pictures for Spider-Man, and he doesn't turn him in, and then he ends up popping up and gassing Spider-Man.
Hey, which
about that? Because that's
the Joker was right. You do get to find out about people in their final moments. They
want to see a hero fall, fail by trying.
But that's not a good way to like bring that up, Keegan, because the Joker's talking about cutting people up while they're still alive.
Hey, it's all about context, Nick.
Remember.
Okay, cool. That's all.
Because it goes from the parade to then him going to the Bugle to try to get more money, and then gets kidnapped by Green Goblin and taken to the roof.
Yeah, and Goblin throws back the cigar, and then just right through the window.
Who takes the photos of Spider-Man?
I don't know. They were just delivered here.
I love how Spider-Man in that scene is like, "Mommy and Daddy are talking." Good.
I knew you two were in cahoots. What grown man says cahoots?
Hey,
J. Jonah Jameson.
Apparently.
And honestly, if J.K. Simmons says cahoots, you just respect it.
Fair enough.
Otherwise, you might get a symbol tossed right at your head, Grayson.
That was a chair, but still.
It was a chair, huh? I should know. We did talk about this movie on the channel.
One of my favorite movies.
It's not my tempo.
Or are you going to be on my fucking time?
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
Okay, we'll go again.
That was a good movie too. J.K. Simmons, good actor.
Oh yeah, very good actor.
All right, so after that, then we get the fire scene.
Yeah, then we get the
fire scene.
Yeah, because he proposes the truce to Spider-Man, like saying, "Hey, you want to team up? Let's team up." And then, because otherwise we're gonna fight until we're dead. So, because I want what I want, you're gonna be the hero. Let's call it a truce.
And when you're a hero, some guy in a goblin costume might make you do a decision.
Some sadist will force you to make a decision that you will regret, or something like that.
And they say that a hero can save us.
Because my name's Chad Kroger and I'm Canadian.
We've talked a lot about Chad Kroger in this. I guess it's only fair they do make a actual song for Spider-Man.
Well, it's such an iconic song too.
Yeah, it's probably one of Nickelback / Chad Kroger's more well-known songs, I would say. Obviously, the movie helped it, but
oh yeah,
who else is in that? Because it's not just Chad Kroger, right?
I can't remember the gentleman's name, but yeah, I know there's another guy.
Well, let's find out. Chad Kroger. Grayson, are we on to the firefight again?
Yeah, so I'm just going through my notes because it's going to be a little all over the place because it goes parade, him talking to Harry, then the bugle scene, then the rain scene, and then the fire.
Oh, it's Josie Scott from Saliva.
Scene.
I do have to say one of my notes is how does the rain stop right where they're making out but still continue to rain around them? What the fuck? And then as soon as Spider-Man swings off, the rain starts to pelt Mary Jane again. That made no sense to me, but hey, movie's got a movie.
Yep, Web. I did like how he took pictures in this one. Obviously, they do a similar setup in Amazing Spider-Man where he just webs up a camera and he's just taking pictures of himself. Though in Amazing Spider-Man, he was trying to actually get some data.
Spider-Man is the first OnlyFans. Confirmed.
OnlyFans creation confirmed.
Speaking of that, I saw a fan animation of like J. Jonah Jameson saying, "Hey, Spider-Man has an OnlyFans. I no longer need you, Parker. You don't need to give me pictures anymore because I can go to Spider-Man's OnlyFans." And he makes a donation request.
The R-rated Spider-Man we never got.
Do we
He
need
felt
it?
cute.
Do we want it?
Felt cute. Might delete later.
Yeah, some of those pictures are like, I don't know how that was taken. I enjoyed them though. They're good. But yeah, this scene obviously gets cut up during his fight with Goblin, who again tries to seduce him in his own words. He's gonna seduce him to the dark side, to the villainy.
Wrong answer.
Well, and then we go to the dinner scene where it's he just like looks at Peter and sees a scar, and he's like, it was from a what was it, bike messenger?
Bike
Walking
messenger
off a curb,
knocked
got
me
hit
down.
by a bike messenger.
Yeah, I was like, what? Who? What kind of answer is that?
It's a New York answer.
A semi-believable answer, unless you're the Green Goblin.
Who's just like, no, it's only my blade.
Speaking of which, I do love that scene because it does show how capable of a villain Green Goblin is. I don't think we get a lot of villains that are shown as being, smart enough to piece stuff together and actually, good enough to outsmart the person they're going up against. Because when Peter comes back and the drop of blood falls down and he figures it out basically from that and kind of puts the pieces together. I love that scene because it shows how kind of, I don't want to say outmatched because for some reason Peter doesn't put together that Norman and the Green Goblin sound exactly the same because he's had a full conversation with the guy twice and literally 20 minutes before in a burning building. So I don't know how he doesn't put that together, but Norman figuring it out is definitely my favorite scene of this movie. And him being just full-fledged Goblin Norman, where he's just, sticking his fingers in dressing and then like basically I fucking Mary Jane while Harry's not looking. Total scumbag move. Total Goblin Jekyll vibes all the way. Or no, Mr. Hyde vibes all the way.
Right. Yeah, no, the Defoe just eats the scenery in this. It makes sense that when they wanted to bring in the Goblin into the MCU, they went with this version because they tried once to reboot it. It didn't work very well. Defoe can still play the character. You might as well bring him back.
I've got a thought that I will bring up at the end about that for sure.
I have a thought that I'll be bringing up at the end too.
Are these hot takes?
Not about Green Goblin.
Could be considered a hot take. It's more of just a breakdown of the differences between the character we have in this movie and the character we get in No Way Home.
Well, and then obviously, like Grayson said, he starts piecing it all together. He goes, Aunt May is doing a prayer. They have a picture of Uncle Ben on her bed, and Goblin just like bursts through. Definitely one of those, I guess, horror-esque scenes that Raimi did pretty well. Grayson, what was that? I saw a smirk.
No, Gene, I was waiting for you to finish, but I love the end of that scene where he blows through the wall and he goes, "Finish it! No rules! Finish it!"
Oh man, yeah, Defoe's just so good on this. I enjoy it.
Plus that monologue where like Norman's, not like pretending he doesn't want to go along with what the Goblin wants, but he does because he knows he really wants it. The power that the Goblin promises. And so like, tell me how. Go for the heart. Spider-Man is indestructible, but Peter Parker is weak. What do I do? I can't. Go for the heart. That entire scene was pretty. I love that scene because it's definitely Willem Dafoe being Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. It's legit.
Yeah, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
Peter at this point obviously knows goblins put together who he is. Like Grayson says, he doesn't know who he is until the end battle, which I don't know. I feel like, especially knowing that he's riding around on the hoverboard that went missing and sounds exactly like Norman.
Who is this man who sounds exactly like Norman Osborn and has the same mannerisms? I have no idea.
Also, who's this man that's also helping Norman Osborn like profit from all these people's deaths? It's
They don't
crazy.
even touch on that in the film. Ian, like, don't bring
Yo,
that up.
I was surprised they didn't talk about that at all.
I was just trying to world build. I'm sorry.
Trying to world build a movie from 22 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because they might make a Spider-Man 4, so we got to world build now, so we can be disappointed later.
I do kind of want to talk about that at the end too.
Okay. Well, let's get. Pretty much, we can get to the end. I think.
Yeah, because there's not much left in the film. It's Peter realizing that Goblin knows who he is because he thinks about. You can see it in his eyes when Aunt May is like, MJ is so precious to you. Like, why don't you tell her how you feel? Everyone knows how you feel. And then
Yeah,
he's like,
that's
oh, I gotta go protect MJ. And then that's when he calls MJ, and Norman's like, can Spider-Man come out to play?
Oh man,
I
he
love
is. He's so good. Classic. Yeah, and then they have a battle on the Brooklyn Bridge, something that we've talked about before in Spider-Man movies. There's
I did like
a
that. I did like that all the New Yorkers kind of gather to Spider-Man's side and help him when the Goblin's attacking.
You mess with Spider-Man, you mess with all of us.
Okay, why do you sound like Whitey from 8 Crazy Nights?
Because comedic effect. Anyway, no, I mean
Grayson.
that's just the only way it pops up in my head. That's
This is the happiest seizure of my life.
Grayson do Spider.
technical foul.
Grayson do Spider-Man, but he's just swinging here. He's just swinging here.
Hey yo, I'm swinging here. Hey yo, I'm from Brooklyn. What are you doing? Get in my way. So let's be honest. We got a
He's from
realistic New
Queens.
Yorker Spider-Man.
He's
There'd be a
from
lot more.
Queens.
I'm from Queens. What are you doing over here? There'd be a lot more. It wouldn't be the PG-13 Spider-Man we get. It wouldn't be, the boy next door. It'd definitely be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Fucking look over here.
All right, guys. If you guys want, we will be making a movie. Just find us on Indiegogo. Fund our authentic Brooklyn / Queens Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, excuse me. Can you tell me how I get to the Grand Central Station? You take a fucking left 2 blocks down, and then you keep fucking going for 8 blocks. Jesus Christ, it's not that hard. Look at the
It's the
fucking
most
man.
iconic. It's the most iconic. One of the most iconic buildings in New York. What do you mean you don't know how to get to Grand Central Station? You fucking new here?
Hey, Spider-Man, where do I go to get a good piece of pizza? I went over to Joey's, but it wasn't that good. You went to fucking Joey's. That's fucking shit pizza. You gotta go to fucking Tony's off of 83rd. That's authentic Italian slice right here.
I can't wait for anybody from New York to see this.
Hey, yo, Spider-Man, give me a backflip the Aki way. Go fuck yourself.
They're fighting, and then William Dafoe, he's like, I should say Norman. I don't know why I keep calling him William Dafoe. He takes off his mask. He's like, Peter, look, it's me. I knew you could save me. And again, he's just trying to set Spider-Man up to be killed, and then he gets stabbed below vital organs, and he dies.
Yeah, unless they nick his carotid artery. He's making it through that, let's be honest. Or no, I'm sorry, femoral artery.
Okay, there we go.
Well, I mean, he could still be in pain from the fighting, so that just maybe the amount of pain he was in finally succumbed to his body.
But then again, he gets hit in the gut, so I mean, couple stitches, right is right.
Right as.
But no, yeah, it's the average, we don't really want to have him come back again, so he's dead. That's it.
Or is he? He could. I mean, Goblin could come back because it's a mental thing, right? He could. I kind of go Fight Clubby, or how Arkham brought Joker back, right?
Well, I feel like to the point of like at the very end of the fight when he's talking with Spider-Man, he's going through like that whole Peter, you can save me. I feel like that's the point where both his personalities merged and Norman was no longer the Goblin and Norman. It was just Norman is now the Green Goblin, and he's accepted that part of himself, and now they're both one personality again because he's no longer trying to be two separate people. He's intentionally manipulating Peter.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Oh.
Why do villains always do that?
Because they're cocky.
I do think it's funny that as I was watching the ending of this one, I think Sam Raimi's films were the only films where the villains actually die. Like none of the other Spider-Man villains actually die in the other films.
Yeah, he gives us the gift of an on-screen death to confirm there is no possibility of coming back.
I mean, he definitely gave us the gift of Venom dying for sure. He made sure to linger on that, so he never had to bring him back.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Right.
I will say, I every time I see this movie, I always find it funny when Spider-Man leaps out of the way and he goes, "Oh, boom!"
Yeah, just that one simple, oh, like it didn't even occur to them that could happen. Well, and that's a really poor plan anyway, because if like he doesn't make any attempt to move out of the way, and even if Spider-Man got hit by it, it was still in the same trajectory to just go at Norman as well.
Well, Nick, I think that's actually a pretty good point. Is because I think he thought that he had Spider-Man, and he did know he had Spider Sense, so he thought he had everything ready to go. And then when it failed, he's like, "Oh." So I think that's actually a really good observation.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, they kind of lean into a Joker aspect where Joker doesn't care if he dies if he can take back Batman with him, you know.
And I think that you and I had discussed that at work that day, that I think Green Goblin is the only villain in Spider-Man's rogues gallery that can kind of competes on the same level as Joker to Batman.
Yeah, he's like his Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people have made that comparison for a long time.
Yeah, like Godzilla has Ghidorah, and a hero is only as good as its villain, and I think that's why Spider-Man or Batman are more popular comic book characters, because their rogues gallery is just so diverse with so many good characters compared to like Superman. You're like, who's his top villain? Oh, this really smart dude.
Some normal businessman who just hates his guts for no reason.
The really good Superman actual like villain that's at least close enough to give him a run for his money is Parasite. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
To be honest,
I'm not a huge fan of DC, to be honest.
Fair enough. He would like the way I got introduced to him was from the Superman TV show, but he's like this dude who worked for I think it was Star Labs, and then he was trying to like sell chemicals to a bunch of gangsters off the books, and then he got double crossed, got put into a bunch of chemicals, and they caused him to develop this ability where he can't survive without like feeding off the life force of living beings. And then he ends up like running into Superman, and he feeds off of him, and he gets so much power that he becomes almost as strong as Superman and makes Superman become a normal person essentially with how much power he loses from coming in contact with Parasite. And he's probably one of the better villains that Superman has if he's done or written the right way.
who was the villain in All-Star Superman?
All-Star Superman, I think that was like partially Lex Luthor.
Okay, yeah. I guess that, yeah, and then Luthor.
He unalives himself.
If you haven't read a Superman one, Nick, that's not a bad one. I'm not a huge Superman fan, but that one I actually kind of enjoyed. We, still waiting to see if Superman flying to Tokyo for lunch holds up. I have not read that yet, but.
Well, no, I was looking to see what who the villain for All-Star Superman was, and it is Lex Luthor.
Have you read All-Star Superman?
No, I've just seen the DC animated movie about it. So I know they like to change it up because they did that with Gotham by Gaslight, and that was, ooh,
Or
that was bad.
Hush. Have you seen the Hush one yet?
No, I've heard it's bad, and
Gee.
I'm staying away.
All right, so yeah, we wrap this movie up with characters kind of going the ways they got to go. Mary Jane confesses her love for Peter Parker, and he says no. So she gets dumped by every guy that she was with in this movie.
But Peter probably did it for the best reasons because he
Yeah.
did it to protect her.
Protect her from people like Harry Osborn. And
Hit her with a bitch you thought.
Bye, Felicia.
Whoa! We're not to Felicia Harding yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was a little too Spider-Man Lotus. I need to pull the gas off of that.
It'd be really funny if they made a new Spider-Man film to use nothing but memes for dialogue.
One thing I want to say about the ending, especially when he's in the hospital with MA, is when he's flirting with MJ, even though she knows or she doesn't know he's Spider-Man and he's still flirting with her, was so dumb. It was so dumb. It's like, dude, if you're already here, you might as well just tell her. But either way, up to you. But this is so dumb, dude.
Nick, any final thoughts before we get to other topics revolving the Spider-Man?
I mean, not really. Again, like I said earlier on, this portrayal of MJ did not age well at all.
One other closing thought I have is when he's, saving the kids and there's that barge that's coming through to help him out, why doesn't Green Goblin just destroy the barge?
Yeah,
make it even harder for Spider-Man to Spider-Man.
He could have shot missiles at the people on the bridge too.
Exactly. Like
I do in my mind like to believe, kind of just a closing thought overall here, but I do in my mind kind of like to believe that Uncle Ben was actually a Spider-Man during his younger days.
Oh, so that whole part where Peter's like, "No, you actually don't know what I'm going through." Uncle Ben's like, "If only I could tell you what I went through."
Yeah, that's my. I like to think that's my headcanon. Is I like to think that Uncle Ben was actually a Spider-Man in his younger days.
All right, so Sam Raimi, if you are listening, Spider-Man 4 it right now. How great would that be if like Spider-Man 4 came out and that was like the plot, and it just turned out Sam Raimi listened to our podcast? I would be pretty happy. I'd be like, I didn't know we had that reach.
I'd be happy if it was good.
I mean, I would be too.
What this movie does go to show is if he does have at least mostly creative control over the film, it turns out really well. When stuff like part 2 and part 3 happens, it gets really dumb when stuff is taken away from him. And he's forced to do stuff that he doesn't know how to write for.
Yeah, which we can get into one of those comparing his comic book movies, because I know he's on a few at some point. I wanted to talk about a little bit of how this movie came to be. Before we get there, let's give ratings recommendations. Nick, what do you rate it? Do you recommend it?
I gave it a good 8.5, 9 out of 10.
Do you recommend it?
Really? Yes. If I give it a high rating, I mean I'm gonna recommend it.
Hey, I've seen movies I thought were technically good, and I was like, that's a good movie. I will not watch that ever again.
Well, yeah, it's funny because I was actually talking about that with my parents this past weekend. We thought the same thing for the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix. It's a really good film, but it's a heavy film, and I've only ever seen it the one time.
Yeah, I think mine would be The King's Speech. It's a good movie, but it's one of the few movies after I bought it, I got rid of it. I was like, I'm never gonna watch that again.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say overall, my rating would probably be 8.7 out of everything. Obviously, the beginning part of the movie is a little bit dry, but it just kind of happens. It picks up steam halfway through. But yeah, definitely recommend. Definitely probably one of my favorite movies of all time. But yeah, it's my rating. I'm sticking to it.
Sam?
I would probably do an 8 out of 10. Like, I'm not big on superhero movies, but it was nostalgic, and I watched it as a kid and made me play some Spider-Man games, or at least one of them, because they basically any after that is kind of the same. But you might get hate from that just because Spider-Man fans are insane. At least video game ones. Because look at the Game Awards, they're bitching about it not being Game of the Year, the new one.
It wasn't that good.
Yeah,
It wasn't that good.
I mean,
I'll die on that hill. It wasn't that good. It sucked. Spider-Man
and
2
then
sucked.
and then yeah, well, because then they would like watch Boulder's game. They're like, I don't understand why this got it, and it's just like, well, you didn't actually play that game. 8 out of 10, and yeah, I would recommend it. I mean, I thought it was good. It's a superhero movie. If you like superhero movies, it's a superhero movie.
Yeah, that's one of the few ones I know we've made Sam watch. So
Didn't have to make me watch it. I already watched it as a kid, but
I know.
I will watch any movie you ask me to watch. I will watch it. I'm just not talking today because I'm not feeling great.
No, I would probably give it a 7 or 8. There's parts of this movie that I really enjoyed, and parts that definitely felt dated or very 90s-esque, and not in the best way, but then sometimes in a very kind of nostalgic way. Very iconic between the suits, the characters, the actors playing the characters.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a reason why people still love Tobey Maguire and his portrayal of the character. He did really well with this. I always think of it like when I compare the three actors, I think Tobey does the best for overall, but I definitely enjoy Tom Holland more than I enjoy Tobey Maguire in his portrayal. Just because it is more high school.
I definitely agree with that.
You know which hill I die on? Andrew Garfield Hill.
I think Andrew Garfield did fine, dude. I just think the movies were not the best.
Nick knows it's just a running joke I have with him. It's not my actual hot take when we get to that movie. Remember, my actual hot take's about Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin.
I mean,
I goblin disease.
I do think about the interviews that Andrew did during the time of filming the Spider-Man. He always talk about how like the reason why they went in the direction that they did with his portrayal of the character was that they wanted to redefine or like reevaluate what an outcast was, because that's what Peter Parker is. He's an outcast. And when the Amazing Spider-Man films came out, being a science nerd wasn't necessarily considered an outcast, so they had to change the character a bit.
Yeah, I think making him the hipster skateboard boy was definitely not the right call, but I get why they did it. Especially because they're trying to make it, different from the Tobey Maguire stuff because it was so big. And I mean, when it came out swinging the way it did, just on all cylinders, it's hard to compete with that. And I only feel bad for Andrew Garfield out of that entire series because he was at least a Spider-Man fan and not just some dude there for a paycheck. So that was hard to see those movies fail so bad for him.
Well, and I think, what is it? No Way Home. I don't see what now. I've just got completely sidetracked. Just Andrew Garfield. No, I think they give him a redemption there, and I think he shined the most out of the three in that movie.
Agreed.
I mean, I thought the thing earlier that was talking about the comparison of all three in that film was like Tobey did a really good job being the old mentor. Andrew did a really good job of being the damaged one who was still fighting his demons, and then Holland was the one that like kind of figured out what it meant to be Spider-Man by coming onto his own.
So, speaking of No Way Home, I think they absolutely did Green Goblin dirty, especially because after this movie, depending on how you interpret the way they transported everyone in from Doctor Strange's spell, they make it sound like they're transporting them in right before they died. And if that's the case, Norman Osborn do it like, I don't know if they were trying to make everybody believe that he was committing to the innocent Norman bit again, but if he was being transported into that universe as he was about to die, you can see in the ending scene, both personalities are no longer separate. They are one. So him doing that whole, I don't know where I am. I was looking for Spider-Man. After everything, when they first introduced his character into No Way Home, it made me kind of dislike that part a lot more because I'm like, he always was this going into this because now he's made that full transition. It's no longer a battle of identity. You kind of just have to commit to him being the villain now because that's would have been made such a better movie is all of those villains having to team up against him which inevitably they do because he turns against all of them. But it could have been a much more tight movie if that's the way it started out, with him being the villain instead of him trying to save everybody. It's him trying to save everybody while trying to stop the Goblin, instead of that whole like plot twist in the middle of the movie. I think they would have made it a way better flowing film than the way they did it. And it would have been more true to the actual character of Green Goblin, the way it ended in Maguire's universe or Raimi's universe.
So at the end of that movie, they get transported back to when they got taken from the timeline, correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
So most of the villains will die anyway.
True.
Because like Doc Ock is in the middle of falling into the sun, into the water.
And going off of your point too, with what they did to Green Goblin in that film, it could have been like some sort of like remorse, like death remorse kind of thing. Like you felt the need to go back to being Norman for a little bit, just because he knew he was about to die.
I would say that would be even better after the fact if it wasn't like him just off the street going back to the innocent Jekyll version of Norman. If it was he's in the cage, he's stuck, and then they find out that he dies, him trying to put on an honest effort to be good again would have been worthwhile, and that could have worked better than what they did. I feel like, I mean, to be fair, it feels like that entire movie was kind of constrained by higher ups and producers wanting certain things from the movie. So I'll give them that, leeway. But I feel like after watching that, and then I like rewatched Spider-Man 2 right after, um, it feels like they were trying too hard to hit the member berries section of everything again to force you to like kind of connect instead of just making a good story.
It wasn't a bad story though.
I'm not saying it's the worst story, but I feel like if we keep expecting mediocre movies, we're not going to get Spider-Man ones. We're not going to get good quality movies like that coming forward if we just keep going, yeah, this is okay enough. So that's my perspective on it.
Well, sometimes I worry with the direction Sony's going, because they have their whole Spider-Verse thing going on right now.
It's bad, dude.
And, Craven, I'm open to. Like, I think that could be watchable. I don't know how I feel about Madame Web.
I'm only seeing that for Sydney Sweeney. That's it.
I was just gonna say that same thing.
So yeah, real quick before we end off, I just wanted to kind of touch upon where the Spider-Man movie came from, which was originally James Cameron. He had met with some executives, and he was actually kind of being talked to about or pitched an idea of an X-Men movie. And it was Stan Lee himself that was like, I heard you like Spider-Man. And James Cameron, huge fan of Spider-Man, and they kind of diverted down that path. Now, his version was going to be R-rated. He was a huge fan of Spider-Man, the comics, but he wanted to, I don't know, make it more up to date, as well as he was the one behind the idea of Spider-Man having the organic web. So that is a holdover from James Cameron. There was going to be cursing in that, so Nick would have got his cursing Spider-Man had that one been made.
Wasn't that one also going to be Leonardo as
Spider-Man?
Peter?
Yeah, that was going to have Leo. I've heard rumors that Kevin Spacey was going to play Goblin, which definitely would not have aged very well. Wouldn't have been in No Way Home for sure.
I mean, he's definitely a menace. So,
well, I'm trying to think. I think it was Sandman and Electro was the main villains, but you can tell it was probably a holdover from the X-Men talks, because Electro is trying to get him to join his side and work together because they're a new breed of human, and this is the next step in human evolution. And so very much Magneto from X-Men, right? Trying to think what else happened. Oh, the climax of that movie would have been a fight at the top of the World Trade Center, which is where Sam Raimi's movie was originally concluding as well up until 9/11. Then they had to reconfigure that whole scene. I mean, even the early trailers of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man included the Twin Towers. So those were, no Harry Osborn in that movie as well.
Wasn't there like talks of him also wanting to make like, the human spider aspect of Spider-Man like a thing? Where he's going to be like overly mutated and become like have extra limbs and stuff and shoot webs out of his butt or something like that? Because I remember hearing that somewhere once.
I don't know if it was in this one. This one definitely stayed more in line with what we know. Because, like I said, he was a huge. I think if you even watch a lot of interviews, you see a Spider-Man picture behind him in a lot of his older interviews. I know there's going to be some relationship stuff going on, some adult relationship between Mary Jane and Peter Parker, but she didn't know he was Peter. She just knew it was Spider-Man, and it happened on the Brooklyn Bridge. And it was like he restrained her using some web, but he's like, "You can break away, it's fine." And he does like a spider mating dance, and then they do stuff.
A spider mating dance. Wow,
what a time to be alive.
So yeah, that was a movie we almost, and I think he went on to make True Lies instead. So, and then Avatar, he wrote that. So that's why we got Avatar. Oh, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to be Otto Octavius.
Peter, what are you doing?
That would have been awesome.
I'm here with my arms.
Oh my god.
And look at them. I'm self-conscious about my extra arms. The
Grayson, just say you're building the sun.
power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Oh my god.
Peter Parker, brilliant but lazy.
Peter Parker.
Peter Parker, brilliant but lazy.
I think that would have been ridiculous. He probably would have turned down that.
The poetry.
Poetry.
Hey, he could still say "get to the chopper" too, and it would make sense.
Holding Peter Parker up to a wood chipper. Get in the chopper.
All right, so now we know what it would have been like, and we're sad. We're sad a little bit. Do you think it would have been?
I'm not sad. I'm not sad. Don't ever say that I'm sad for it.
He drops him, Butterfingers.
Nick is especially sad for it.
Butterfingers.
You've got a train to catch.
Yeah, very much a different universe, but you can see if you look over that script, you can see where not a lot, some of the ideas. I think people below that Raimi just kind of took that script. It's vastly different, but you can see little things that he might have taken or was inspired by, and I don't know, just an interesting look back. And then we will get to Spider-Man 2 next time. Oh, with Otto Octavius not played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, unfortunately.
I need more trivia.
2 out of 10. Already will say it.
2 out of 10 just for that. But they have
There's only
character
25 pounds of it on the planet. Tritium. Ow.
I just want to know, there's a world that exists, a crossover of Otto Octavius and Mr. Freeze.
I was trying so hard to
You're
come
so
up with
handsome.
I was trying so hard. Trying so hard to come up with an octopus like cheesy line, but I just couldn't do it.
I'm going to turn you into calamari.
Yep, there you go.
Hey, but at least it would have been James Cameron directing him and not Joel Schumacher.
I'm going to tear you apart.
There we go. It just, let me see. I think those are. Oh, where Peter Parker got his abilities was different. They go to a lab where they're genetically making fruit flies, and one of these fruit flies get away, fly into a web, the spider eats the fruit fly and then bites Peter Parker, transferring those genetically mutated fruit flies into Peter Parker. So should he really be Flyman? He's
should be
actually Jeff.
Flyman.
It's just Jeff Goldblum as Spider-Man facing off against Arnold Schwarzenegger as Otto Octavius.
Well,
Oh
this
dear.
sounds like a
Oh dear, oh
great
dear, oh dear.
movie.
Well, you see here, I'm Spider-Man.
Oh
I
my
shoot
goodness.
webs and things. You know, zip zap, flip flip.
He's holding Mary Jane over the water. That's no good. That's no good. No good. No good at all. No.
The world's gonna be different when everyone becomes Spider-Man.
For those that are interested, the new Ghostbusters Frozen Empire trailer just dropped. So, or at least dropped today anyway. So
I am interested and did
Ooh.
not know.
it looks like it's going to be good, even if Kumail Nanjiani is in it and Patton Oswalt.
I'll have to look at
Alrighty.
it or check it out.
Well, have a good night, gentlemen.
Until Spider-Man 2. So once again, we want to say thank you to Nick and Grayson for joining us for this deep dive into Spider-Man 2002. And we hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed watching and discussing the film. We definitely got more on the horizon as far as these deep dives are concerned. And not just strictly Spider-Man. So keep an eye on the channel, but we do promise we will be going through the entire Spider-Man filmography and concluding with a tier list. So keep an eye on that. But until then, if you want to see more Culz reviews, including more deep dives, click that link to your left. For more about what we're doing here at Culz Paranormal, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know, outside of Spider-Man, what are some other films you want us to talk about on Culz Reviews Deep Dives?